this syntax that we have written for the CSS, right? So basically, if I just have a look at this part that is written for the CSS, right? So what do we have is there is this P written over here. Now what is this P? So basically P is known as the selector, right? We are basically from our HTML file, we are selecting some tag on which I want to apply some properties, right? So it can be P tag, it can be H1 tag, it can be B tag, and it can be table tag, whatever. So whatever the tag that we select, we basically first of all write it over here. So the first thing that you're gonna see is the selector. Okay, so you're gonna mention the selector over here, and then this will be like the body of the CSS. Whatever the changes that we're gonna be writing will be inside the body of this tag. So inside this, we're gonna be writing the property name, the property that we want to change, okay, and then we will be giving the value to that property. So this is like the syntax of a CSS when we want to apply some CSS on something. So this is like the syntax that we need to write it in. So if I compare it with this thing, so the selector is P over here, the property that I want to change is the color property, and the value of the property is red over here, right? So now we have understood that how do we write CSS, but what we have to think about over here is that what if I am just targeting some particular P tag over here? What if I just want to target some customized blocks or some customized things, and I want to change only that, right? So there comes the role of selectors in CSS. Like we can particularly select some part of the web page that I want to apply CSS properties at, right? So now let's have a look at selectors. So talking about selectors now, basically selectors, I would be like going to my HTML page, I would be selecting some part of my page and I would be applying some CSS properties on that particular part, right? Now there is one thing that we should be knowing about, that is some like we can basically create some containers, empty containers, in which we can just put our some part of the page, right? And we can choose to apply some CSS properties on those particular containers, right? A very useful container that we have is known as a div tag, right? So div tag is just like a empty box in which we can put our content and we can apply properties on that particular div, right? So div is basically works on block level, right? It is just going to create some block and we can apply some properties on that block. And how do we create a div tag? Very simple. I'll just simply write a div and that's it. Even if I just save it, you see nothing has been changed on the page. And let's say if I just cut all of this and put it in the div tag, now this entire thing is basically now part of a div, right? So this div is basically now a container and I can apply some properties on this div and I can have multiple divs in my web page, right? Now if I want to mark this container with some for some selector, right? So basically there are like first thing we're going to be discussing about very simple selectors that we have. So simple selectors are like we can select via some ID or some class, right? Now you can choose any of it, right? First of all, I have to basically mark this with some class or ID, right? So let's just understand this with an example over here, right? So let's say to this div tag I'll give some ID. So how will I can give ID like this? So let's say the ID is I'm just going to take some random like something over here, just say dummy. Okay, so basically dummy is the ID. Now this entire div over here can be accessed, or I can basically apply changes with the help of this ID dummy over here, right? So if I just go back to my CSS sheet and if I just comment this out, now I have this ID over here, dummy. Okay, now how will I access the ID over here? In order to access the ID, I would be using hashtag. Okay, and the name of the ID is dummy. So like this, I can apply some changes on my the div that has the ID dummy, right? So for example, if I say now color is let's say blue. If I save this, now you see the entire changes has been made on this particular div tag. Okay, so I have basically selected one element from the HTML structure to apply or to make some changes in my CSS sheet. Okay, so that's how basically the selector works. Similarly, I can also give it a class. Okay, now you can choose to give ID or class, or you can give both, right? Both of these will work as a selector. So let's say I just call it a dummy class. Okay, now if I want to make changes on the dummy class, then I would be using dot, and then I will be writing dummy class. So basically whenever I want to choose an ID, I would be using hashtag, and for class I'll be using dot. Okay, now I'll just say something like, let's say background color, and maybe something like aqua. So now you see the div has the background color aqua, and I have changed the color of the div with the help of a class. Okay, now let's take some more examples over here. Let me just remove this, and what I'm going to do is I'm also going to comment the table for a bit now. So I'm just going to select this, and I'll just comment it out. Okay, now what I'll do is after this I'm gonna create another div. Okay, and let's say I'll give it a class, and I'll just call it class 2. Okay, and for this I'm going to give it a class. So I'm just gonna first write class, and I'm going to call it class 1. And inside this div tag, I'm just going to say that there will be another p tag, and then this p is going to have some words. So I'm just going to say lorem 20. Okay, and one more, I'm just going to have another div tag over here, and this will have a class, and let's say class 3. And then I am just gonna give a p tag again over here, and let's say this is having some words, let's say lorem 30. Okay, so yeah, basically this is something I have on my web page. Right now, what I basically also can do is, let's say I want to like give some changes on paragraphs, right? So let's say this paragraph is having a class, let's say dummy. Okay, and then this is also having a class dummy, and this is also having a class dummy. Okay, so basically now I see that my multiple tags are having common classes. Right now, if I want to make sure that I want that all the p tags with the class dummy, I want to apply changes to them, right? So what I can do is I can basically say that p, because all the paragraphs with class, so dot dummy, so p dot dummy. So if I now say that color red, okay, and I'll also make one more change. Let's say the first one is not having, let's say this is having class dummy 1, right? So now if I save this, so you see that all the paragraphs that are having class dummy have changed their color to red, but this class over here, whose paragraph was basically having some different class, that has not changed. So I am basically now applying these properties on multiple paragraph with same class, right? So if I change it to dummy, then the changes will be applied over here also. Okay, so basically that's how you can specify that all the common elements with common class name, I want to apply changes, and I can do it like this. Next up, we also have a universal selector. So what I can do is I can basically use asterisk over here. So asterisk will mean everything, right? So if I do something like this, let's say I'll say background color, and let's just give some value over here. So I'm also going to tell about colors a bit later, right? But right now I'm just going to say give some value over here. So you see that the entire web page has changed the background color to this particular color that I've given over here, right? And if I just make it a bit grayish, so there. So now everything has been like affected on my web page with the asterisk symbol. So asterisk is basically known as a universal selector. And further, what I can also do is I can also you can say group my selectors together. Like for example, let's say, let me just comment this out first. So let's say I'm having this div with class 1, and then this div with class 2, and then this div with class 3. Okay, so all the divs are basically having a different classes. Now let's say I want to apply changes on class. So class, I would be using dot, so dot class 1, and let's say I want to make a change on this, and I'll say text. I just want to change the alignment of the text, so text align, and I want to make it center. So if I save it over here, I'll just remove this and save this. So you see that the paragraph has basically changed the alignment, the text has changed the alignment to the center, right? Similarly, I want to do the same thing on my class 2 also. So I'll say class 2, okay, and similarly I also want to do it on class 3, like this. So basically what I'm doing is I am applying same property, but for that I'm basically creating like I'm writing this again and again, like I'm creating class 1, class 2, class 3, right? But what I see over here is that I just I can group them together because I'm making similar change on each of them, right? So what I can do instead is I can basically say I can put a comma over here and over here also, and I can just remove these. So you can see over here that, let's say, let me just do it right for now. So you see that it is now applying all the properties on class 1, class 2, and class 3, right? If I make it left, so entire text has now shifted to the left. If I make it center, so it is now in the center. So basically I am now grouping them together instead of writing it again, because I am just requiring the same change on all the different elements.